Hello, everybody. This is Ken Faulkner, and this one's going to be a doozy of a knife video. I don't know. I actually did like an outline on this one. I got like a page and a half of thoughts. I don't know if you're like me. I get all in my head thinking about, you know, stuff that I'm really into. Clearly, this is probably the most, definitely up there in the thing that I'm into, collecting knives, and it's a personal thing. My collecting is not the same as others in the community. Um, Not the same as many people that I communicate with in the community, but we all share a love, and there's a commonality, and then there's times when our preferences that we choose and desire, because I don't know that it's really a choice so much as it is just what how we react to certain things. So yeah, let's get into it because this I'm gonna try to make it so it's not so long, but it is gonna be long for sure. So preferences in anything, if it's cars, if it's somebody you want to date, it's if it's food, um, any kind of thing, you're gonna have preferences. Some people are gonna be more limited in the area that they're willing to explore. Um, some people are going to be just they want to try everything. I think I'm more in that kind of category where I want to just try things out, and then that's where I build my preferences from. From the beginning of my collecting, I really didn't know what I liked and disliked. I know it looked cool. There's that whole initial look cool thing, but then once you kind of start to get more familiar with things, it's almost like with cooking or things like that, where you might start out with something very basic and you're fine with it, but then you go to a restaurant or you find some recipe and you make it, and wow, I like these flavors and this, or no, I do not like, I do not like this. It's never a right or wrong thing. Never a right or wrong thing. I mean, that's the way I see it. I mean, I know that there's some people that are just gonna, and I guess all of us in our head, we think, well, whatever we like is what's really good. But if you step outside of yourself and you start realizing that everybody's different, you gotta understand there's gonna be people that are gonna disagree with you, and they may disagree with you strongly. But at the end of the day, it's gonna be a preference. It's gonna be an opinion, and we all have the right as individual people, especially in this country, USA, you know, we have the right to believe different things, express our opinions, and that kind of thing. And I think it's a beautiful thing, personally. That's what I like. So I'm gonna get into my topics here. Hopefully, having it all written out is going to keep me more organized and keep me more on track. So I try to think about things earlier on in your knife buying, collecting. Maybe you're not a collector. Maybe you just buy some knives for certain things. Maybe you're new. Maybe you're thinking about getting into it. So hopefully some of this stuff, there's definitely going to be some of this stuff that's more deep into the rabbit hole, and other things that are going to be just kind of entry thinking about it. So I started with use, because you always want to think about what's the point. What are you going to use? What are you going to do with these things? I mean, you buy them, you collect them, or maybe you don't collect them, but you do something with them. There's no use in having them if you don't have a use for them. Now that use can be quite a wide variety. It can be just EDC, and I think you hear so much from these top people in the community, experts on knives that really know their stuff, and a lot of them will say that most of the time they're just cutting stuff, paper, boxes, packages, things like that. Lefty used to always talk about how he had to cut out his shipping labels, and that had an impact on how he felt about knives and what he liked and didn't like. So that's going to come into play. So light cutting and EDC was my first idea. Then there's the side of people, and it kind of, this is where I kind of came into it originally. Well, into the heavy collecting originally is training, self defense, because I've like martial arts training, stuff like that. I'm into that too. It's just a thing I'm into. I enjoy it so much, and this kind of combined these two things that I like into one. So training, and I think this is a smaller aspect of the community. Although self-defense, there may be a lot of people that think about knives in self-defense. Training is probably a smaller, because it takes a lot more effort. Because it's more than just buying a knife; it's drilling. Training is drilling, and I know people say, "Well, why bother?" Blah 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 blah. That kind of thing. I'm not training to get into knife fights. I'm training because I love the competitive, the gamemanship of it. It's like playing chess. It's like reacting back and forth. I'll get too deep into this, and then it'll be a 5-hour video. Okay, moving on. Then there's the bushcraft and the fishing and the hunting, and I know people like this that like that stuff, and I see the knives that they like, and it definitely affects the type of knife that you like. And then there's the side of people that work in manufacturing, construction, any kind of thing where you're out physically doing things, cutting things. So, I mean, I think I have a very diverse bunch of knives, and there's certain ones obviously you're going to have more of because of preferences. But I do tend to like I said, I like to try out different things. It's kind of like really trying to find new restaurants. If you're into cars, you want to try like a truck versus a sports car versus all these different things to see because they're all different, right? So there's going to be different things related to it. So there's a lot of my knives, like smaller knives that are definitely going to be light cutter, but they have a great tip on them, and so you can do a lot of stuff with the tip, but you're not going to be bushcrafting with them. Then I'll have fixed blades with like a Scandi grind, definitely a bushcrafting kind of knife. There's a ferro rod on here, so I mean, that kind of thing is going to be related to that. And I don't do a ton of that kind of stuff, but I do like having those kind of knives. Again, in fixed blades, you got the combat knives, the classic K-bar. It's that whole thing. It's got the serrations on there, survival, tactical, that kind of thing. Then there's training, self-defense. You can get into the karambits. So this is a Spyderco, which has a lot of combative aspect to the knives in general, but this one's a karambit, which most people that will review something like this say that this is built for one reason. So you might have this as a preference, and therefore it's going to reflect in the types of knives that you buy. And then work, you might be somebody shipping, receiving, and you're opening boxes all day. So maybe you want a tough light, something that's small, doesn't get in the way. Maybe you want the Rat Model 1 because it's a big knife, and some of your tasks you need to have something bigger for doing certain types of cutting, but it's a solid built knife, not super expensive, so if it breaks, because if you're hard using a knife, there's more chance that you're going to damage the knife or damage it to the point where you need to replace it. So that might be why you would select a knife. Going into the next topic, I'm talking about types, and we've already kind of started showing them fixed blades, folders, and slip joints, kind of those kind of categories. So fixed blades, I started my early collecting with stuff kind of like this guy here. Fortunately, I got this all backed out so you can see it. It's a karambit. It's not karambit. This is a Gurkha. I'm gonna probably mix things up because I'm in overload here, guys. So Gurkha, it's it's like fantasy. It's got the etching on it. It's got a history of the Gurkha fighters. And I would collect these things, but what are you going to do? You're going to put this on your belt and carry it down the street? Not likely. You might go out in your backyard. I used to do that when I was younger. Go out in the backyard, I'm swinging around, hacking trees, and just having a ball. And I love that stuff. I really do. And it's that whole fantasy side. I mean, that's a whole nother realm when it comes to likes and dislikes, and just using your imagination as part of it. So there's that. And then there's the folders. Obviously, you look out onto the crowd here, and all these folders. I am big on folders. And that's when I got to my serious collecting, because I wanted to carry my knives. I wanted to have them with me all day long. How cool is that? You got a knife with you wherever you go. And there's going to be those times when you need to cut something and you have something to cut it with. Nothing more frustrating. Like if you're on an airplane and you're flying somewhere and you got something, how am I going to get this thing open? How am I going to... I don't have a knife. They will not allow me to have a knife. So when you're used to carrying every day, that's a thing. And then folders are great for carrying and use, because you can pull it out of your pocket, flip it open, use it, flip it back closed, and put it back in your pocket. I love that whole aspect. And then there's a whole bunch of more things here in my preferences related to modern folders, and clearly that is one of my preferences. I mean, if I were to go through the topics we've already talked about, for use, mine is going to be light cutting and EDC. I am going to do some training. I am going to do some bushcrafting type stuff, but only on off times. Even training. I train martial arts, but I don't train with knives all the time. I mean, there's a lot of empty hand type techniques, grappling, all those kind of things. And then work. I work in an office, so there's times when I have to change out a roll of paper on a plotter or something like that. Something along those lines. Something in the office that needs to be done. But I mean, that's pretty rare. So it is going to be mostly light cutting, and then the types, like I said, folders is a big deal. Now another big topic, a super important topic, and maybe even one of the most talked about things is price. There's the price thing, and that's all going to be based on how much you're willing to commit. So we're saying to ourselves, we have a certain amount of income or net worth, if you will. You may have money in the bank and you're doing fine. Or you may be like probably the majority of people, especially nowadays, and you're more week to week. Maybe you have emergency funds set aside. Maybe you just use your credit cards in the case of emergency, and hopefully you pay them off. But sometimes the emergency is just so big that you need to pay it off over time. All these kind of things you really got to consider, because you're putting yourself at risk every time you spend money that you maybe don't have to spend. Obviously, if you're working and you need it as a tool for work, then that's something you have to have. If you want to go out bushcrafting and things like that, unless you actually live in an environment where that's a daily thing because of where you live, then it might be something you have to have. But for the most part, I think in general, these are more like you want to have them. You enjoy having them. When it comes to cutting in the kitchen, yes, there's a case where you have to have a knife, but then it depends on, what you want out of a kitchen knife. You can spend hundreds, probably thousands of dollars on kitchen knives if you want, or you can get a set of them, from Walmart, and it's not as expensive, and it'll work fine. But so it's really something you got to think about. How much value do you have in these knives? How much, if you have this knife here and you want to get it, and you look at it based on your preferences and what you like and what you want, you're going to decide for yourself what kind of value is there to that, and then am I willing to pay that? So there's so many ranges. You know, everybody talks about budget knives, and a lot of people are under 50. Some people say under 30 for a budget knife. And the thing is that you can get a bunch of knives. I mean, this JSWS is a super budget knife. There's others that are really one of the ones that's really hot, and I did a video on it recently. Was this Pyrite Light, under $30. And this is good quality. I mean, you know, you can spend $30 and get something that's just not really going to last, but this one is going to be good. It's got fidget. It's got so much to it at $30. There's a lot of value there. Sometimes for me, buying a knife that's inexpensive but has a huge value, so that ratio from how much I have to spend to how much I get from it or value it myself, that's always kind of a factor when I'm buying. So I will buy less expensive knives, or I will buy more expensive knives. And some of the more expensive knives, you almost kind of have to forget about how much you spent on it. Something like this one here, Custom Knife Factory. Oh man, it's just a beautiful knife. And there's so much about this to like, but then when you think about how much you paid, and then think about the ratio of money versus how much you enjoy it, does it compare? How does it compare to something like this? So, and it's a preference. It really is a preference. So yeah, it's, you know, I'm seeing like under 50 maybe for budget, and then these are kind of ranges in my head, and everybody's gonna have their cutoff points, because I buy in all these ranges except for this last one. But but it changes how I do it, like what I'm willing to buy for that much money. So like a 50 to 150 seems to be a category where it's still kind of like it's a good price, and it depends on how much quality you have. One that I just did, the Bel Air, recently, definitely has some value being USA made, and that is a huge factor when it comes to price. And then materials, MagnaCut, aluminum handles, but very nicely done. The texture on these things are really good. So yeah, that's in that range. So I just feel like there's a lot of value in that knife at that price point. And then there's going from like 150 to 300. That's when it really starts to kick in. You know, I have a whole case of knives that are premium knives, and there's so many knives in that category. Yeah, I'm not. This one's probably close to 300. Again, it's USA made. It's Microtech. We'll talk about brands in a little bit. It's got an interesting lock. It's got a tactical look. I mean, there's all these different factors that make me want to buy this thing. And then once it gets over 150, yeah, I know I'm going to lose my voice before this is all over. So funny. So much fun. Anyway, you know, when I get up to that price range, I need to check a few more boxes. I mean, I have to, or else I'm not going to, you know, and then when I have that much money, it's like, wow, I have all these options to check boxes that maybe I can't at a 50 to 150 range. Maybe I'm not going to be able to get like all titanium construction, something like that. Then there comes the point where you're getting into the $300 to $600 range, and then that is like a knife like this. This might even be over 600, depending on where you buy it. I got the second hand. We got the Hinderers, again, and brands and USA made, where it kind of goes up. Some of these kind of peak up above it with the Striders. The Striders are definitely a valued brand, and the brand's going to come up. And a lot of times when you're getting up to these price range, brand is really going to come into it. This is a Shirogorov. Brand is going to come into it when you're going to spend that much money. Okay, so the next level is sky's the limit. Okay, now obviously I've crept up maybe above the 600. I maybe paid one time, and that was the Shiro. that I paid over 600 for. But other than that, I haven't really done that anywhere. I did have the gift of the, and I don't have it out here, but the Rockstead. That's kind of a sky's the limit knife. I should bring it over. Hang on a second, guys. Disorganized. This is, when you talk about save queens, and that could be brought into the discussion, kind of will later on, and that could be underused too. Your use for your knife might be just wanted in the collection, and you want to just take it out and look at it, and you might want to have it in its own special box, and you open it and it goes, oh, and the angels sing, and all the stars line up, and everything is just beautiful in the world, and you got that beautiful knife that's sitting in its foam that's all cut perfectly to match it, and it's got this shiny DLC, and it reflects so nice in the light. I mean, that might be your use for the knife. And this is one. Now, it was a gift, so I can't take full credit for it. I did select it but I was given that price range and the mandate that it had to be extremely special, and it is. Okay, moving on. Country of origin. This is a big one. Maybe even, probably not as big as price, but it comes into the price. I don't want to say argument, but conversation. I mean, an argument can be a conversation. You don't have to be choking each other at the end of the talk to have it be an argument. You can just be saying, "Hey, this is why. These are my points for what I think are important." So, country of origin, obvious, USA only. We've had companies like Hoback that said they were all USA made, and then it came out that they weren't, and wow, it just the amount of backlash that really comes when people feel like they've been led astray for something that has a huge value for a lot of people. USA made knives, and I mean, obviously I got some of these that are that way for me. You got your Medfords, companies that are just unashamedly USA made and proud of it, and are going to have a price tag that matches. But then you got the Kershaw, which is USA made. Now, I don't know for sure that every single thing on here, maybe the screws are made in somewhere else. I don't know enough about it to say, but at a under 150 price range, I mean, it's hard to imagine when you look at other USA made knives, especially where they're making their own screws and they're just every little thing, every little detail. Stuff like this one here. One of the fun things about doing these videos, I got all my knives out here and I can just enjoy them, show them to you guys. I hope you enjoy them too. But this is definitely USA made, Three River Manufacturing. They have a cool style to them. Okay, so then there's a combination, and that's where I am, because I have a ton, and the majority probably of my knives are under, are lower cost knives that are made in other countries, and probably the majority of them are China. Sometimes you got something where it's made by a designer in the U.S., but they go out to China for their OEM work. So you get quite a lot of that. And some companies are kind of like that too, where you got the Demcos, which the Demcos have USA made only stuff, but they also have stuff like this one that was made in Taiwan, and the price reflects it. So, and then there's some that are just a straight up Chinese company, and they making Chinese knives. Some of them are really, really high quality, good materials, all that stuff, but it is made in China by a Chinese company. So there's no connection to U.S. Other than selling them here. And then there's going to be so combination of knives meaning like Chinese versus USA or other countries, based on quality. So you get a lot of people that are going to buy the. Don't have any WE knives out here. I don't have a lot of WE knives, but I do have some stuff. This is another one where it's a USA made designer, but he's getting them OEM'd overseas in China, just to keep the price down. Let's see if they have. I should have something here in this big. Did you know what I'm talking about? I can go over WE Riot. I do have this Riot. This one here is actually a really good quality knife, but they did find a way to bring the price down on this one, down to that between the $100 and $200 mark. I think it's like 180 or something like that. But yeah, that's the thing where I'm talking about. There could be you can have high quality of a collection and have like a cutoff point at what quality level that you are willing to go below, and still buy USA made knives and stuff from that is made over in China. So here's one that's a buck. Probably not the highest quality. It is a lockback, so doesn't have tons of fidget to it. Maybe not the highest quality, but it is a USA made knife. Again, I don't know for sure that it's every single piece of it is USA made. I can't speak to that, but so this might be something that's a USA made knife that some people would say, it doesn't kind of meet my threshold of what I want in a knife. So, and then there's a combination based on price, and I think probably more people are involved in that they'll buy a USA made knife, but there's only so much they're willing to spend. Their budget for knives has a threshold, and my threshold, I started out with like maybe a $200 threshold. Well, before that even was over 100 seemed unreasonable. Then it quickly bumped up 200. Then it got up to 300, and then it hung there for a long, long, long time. And then after that, that's when it kind of exploded. But so combination of different countries based on price is going to be a big driving force. Next topic, brand, another one. So, that's what I love about this collecting. I love and the content of reviewers is that you got so many of these aspects that you can talk about and things that people are passionate about and people just love. And brand is huge. When I first started buying knives, I was getting stuff like, where's that dude, that crazy guy, the M-Tech, where I didn't know what I was doing. I would get a CRKT. I've heard of them before, but now I'm just not. That's not a brand that I'm actively going after. Then I started getting into the Civivis and the Kaisers. Maybe a Kaiser right here, and I got a lot of Kaisers, and I went through this whole phase where it's Civivis and Kaisers. See if I should have some Civivis here. There's a Civivi. So I had a time where because they have such good quality for good price, really good, consistent, just trustworthy. You knew you were going to get something good, and it has a great action to it. And you get a wide range of different types of knives, different types of patterns and things like that from these companies. So I was just happy just to buy basically those brands, maybe some other stuff. Spyderco, this was an early one, and you can see the wear on this one. This one's definitely been used quite a bit. But Spyderco early on was a brand that I really got into. PM2, there's a certain amount, because there's people where it comes to Spyderco where it seems almost like a next level, whereas with Kaiser and Civivi, you don't feel, maybe when you get into the WE knives, there might be a little bit more brand loyalty sort of thing. Spyderco definitely has that kind of brand loyalty, and the fact that they're doing so many different steels with this CPM S45V in here, and they're doing tons of different steels. You know, and when I'm looking at my knives, I'm thinking, oh, I should have brought out this one. I should have brought out this one, but my table is only so big. S30V is like a mainstay for them, so you can get just your standard stuff in that. But you can, there's just like so many different options with Spyderco. Oh, phew, I didn't even bring out any Benchmades. It's a thing. Benchmade's a thing. I'm very much on the fence about this thing. I don't want to disregard the love that people have for Benchmade. I do have a 940, and I do have a what's the other one that everybody wants? The Bug Out. But that's all I have, and so that brand loyalty, that's not something that I have. But I do have a few, and I did want to find out what's going on with these guys and what they're all about. But I just kind of, I'm not a Benchmade guy. But the whole thing about the price, you know, when you get into the price thing that we talked about earlier, that is such a wall between people, and I don't really feel that way. I'm not saying that I'll never again buy a Benchmade knife, but I'm pretty darn sure, unless I find one in the secondary at a much reduced price, I'm not going to get the Narrows. There's just certain ones that just, for me, and I get people, especially when you bring up this topic, the people that will come onto the videos and discuss it, not in a bad way. They're not like freaking out or anything like that, but they have their reasons that they think that the value is there. USA, all of them are USA made. Like with Spyderco, you get Japan, Taiwan, USA, China. You get like all over the world. Knives are made from all different places, but with Benchmade, it's always USA made. So, I mean, there is that, and then there's also, and I didn't put it in here because it's a little bit of a more nuanced thing, is warranty and customer service. A big deal for some people, really, really big deal. For me, I like good customer service. I don't, because I have such a wide variety of knives, I don't have one that I use so much. And because I'm doing pretty much light cutting on most of my stuff, and if I'm heavy using, I'm probably going to use something that's not super expensive. Like you got this, the Shaman, which is a heavy duty knife for a Spyderco. It's got a lot more thickness than most of them do. And it's a heavy duty knife, but I'm probably not going to take this if I'm going to go out and be chopping on wood or something like that. I'm going to take something less expensive. I mean, that's well made for that task, but less expensive at the same time. So yeah, Benchmade, Spyderco. Then you get into some of the smaller batch makers like the Hinderers. I just commented about the Hinderers. I just definitely a Grail knife, and I love this knife. After I got it, I was especially how I like to carry this one just because of the feel in hand. I know that when you get into finger grooves and things like that, some people don't care for it, but for me, it fits so well in my hand. It just is. It's what I like in a knife in so many different ways. It's checking so many boxes. So Hinderer. I have two of them now. More expensive, you know, but I do have some. Three Rivers Manufacturing. I do have a few of those, like 3 or 4 now. This one's my favorite because it's got that awesome handle material. Microtech. We'll get into the OTF thing because I'm in California, so that limits it, and since they kind of specialize on it, but I do have a few, and I did show the Stitch. So you know, that's a brand that I really like. Then, you know, so there. Anyway, there's a lot of people that have brand loyalty, and there's people that have brand preferences just because they know that Kaiser's always making good knives, just good quality, trustworthy type thing, and the price is more reasonable for a lot of people. Let's see. You got premium brands versus budget brands. So kind of touched on that already. So, you got your Syncuts. I mean, great brand. And if you have, you got that threshold down under $100, under $50, you can get so much stuff in a Syncut. There's the Tenable knives now that's come out, and other ones like that are kind of offshoots. And I really do like that. I really like that some of these knife companies like Kaiser's tends to have it all under one blanket, and you can get a range where you can get more inexpensive and more expensive, all under that same one. But then you got companies like Weiss, Civivi, Syncut, now Concept, and Tenable. There's a few other Best Tech Men. I'm sure there's other examples out there, but it's nice that they're looking at the market, and they're not saying, "Oh, we're only going to build these kind of knives." And there's something to be said for people that have, there's going to be certain companies that have certain quality levels, and that's what they're going to make quality knives, and that's all they're going to make. They're not going to cut corners. They're not going to compromise. But then there's other companies that say, "Hey, there's a lot of people out there that want to have knives that are, good, well-made knives, but don't have the money to pay for them." Vosteed's one of those where they've kind of gone up and down the price points, where they have some coming out with these new locks and things like that are higher cost, and then they'll also have a bunch of stuff that's really cool that's a cheaper price. And then there's people that are just buying knives, and they don't really specifically have a certain brand that they like. I think we all have certain brands that we kind of like think about, like a Tucson. That's another one that some people are very fond of, Tucsons, and they buy these suckers, man, because there's so many different ones, and they can be pretty wild, like this one. And I'm kind of a little bit guilty of that for sure. So I think we all have certain brands that we kind of like, but then there's people that will buy whatever, and I'm kind of a buy whatever guy for sure when it comes down to that preference. Size and weight. We got smaller and lighter ones. Definitely super light. I should have had the bug out for this. That's like a classic idea. This is the Mini Praxis. Smaller and lighter. And some people, when you get into a bigger knife, they don't like it because it's bigger. They won't carry it because it's bigger. And I like bigger knives, but I'm not going to say to somebody, "Hey, you're wrong. You don't want us. You don't need to only have smaller knives. You can, or you should always have a bigger knife." I'm not going to do that. Some of these crazy oversized things. A lot of people will not carry something like that. It's so heavy. It's like almost a pound. But I will carry it specifically because it's crazy, and I love it. And it's heavy, and it feels like something different. So anyway, it's a preference, guys. You heard it hit that table. It's a preference. Easy carry, that's important. I mean, you even got a big one like this guy here, but it's for the size, for how big this is. It's actually, and a lot of people comment about that, when it's in the pocket, it really doesn't take up that much room, relatively speaking. Like this guy here is a super thin one. Super thin. Put it in the pocket, you're hardly going to even notice that it's there. This little guy, which I've always had kind of a fondness for, the Burnley Squid from CKRT. That's a little dude. You can just pop it in there, and you hardly even know it's there. Then you got, I haven't really shown a lot of slip joints, but uh, you got these little knives, and this just reminds me of earlier times. you know, where we were transitioning from only having fixed blade knives to having something you carry in your pocket all the time, and all the stories of people that got a knife and it was handed down to them. Um, like this one was handed. My dad wasn't a knife guy; he was an engineer. That's kind of where I kind of moved into my line of work and stuff. But I have other relatives, and this was handed down to me. Um, and then, so these little knives with multiple blades, that whole thing about if you dull one, then you have another one as a backup, or if you need to get into a little small area, you got those options. So that's pretty cool. And then you got the slips as part of the carry. So Jack Wolf took that to heart and gave you a slip with every single knife that he gave you, because he was giving you some really super quality stuff at a higher price, and people had to value what he was producing, and therefore they want to protect it. And because these tend to drop in the pocket, I do have this one here, which has a clip. It's the first one. It was actually kind of a little gift for waiting a little bit to get this Tuya knife I just bought. The guy, I can't think of his name, the guy for the U.S. company. I'm horrible with names. Anyway, he's a great guy, and he threw that one in. And so I got this Rosecraft that it happens to fit in. And Rosecraft will sell you slips, but they don't sell it with the knife. But then also the price point comes down because of that. So anyway, it just carrying, this is a little bit easier to grab out of your pocket because it does have a clip. These get thrown in your pocket, but it won't get messed up with your keys, and it's kind of easier to find because of that. And then you have other ones that maybe I tend to put these guys in a fifth pocket just to make it easier to grab, because the carry and easy to carry has to do with the pocket clips too, things like that, because it's going to, how you're going to be able to find it when you need it out of your pocket is important. Big and overbuilt, and I showed a couple of those guys. This guy is bigger than it needs to be for a pocket knife. This guy is just crazy, and I love it. It's awesome. Megatherium, just the name tells you it's big and beefy and a little crazy. So preferences. I should have put like craziness as one of the preferences. Blade shape. Okay, so this is something that's big. Wow, this is super. This is gonna be my longest video ever. Okay, blade shape. So you got your whole battle over what's a sheep's foot, what's a Wharncliffe. Well, but there's a lot of them with a lower tip, some with a belly, some with a totally straight edge, like that. Some of them are more like this, where there's not really a whole lot of piercing that can be done. A little bit, but not much. That tip is not really accessible. But it does have a good cutting edge, and you can do everything you need to do with the cutting edge. So if you don't, you got a little bit of a tip there, but it's not like something like this guy here, which the tip is just right out in front. It's right there. There was some knife that talks about this end towards the enemy. This end is definitely towards the enemy. Utility cutting. So back to the Tough Light, got that utility. There's a lot of the knives nowadays where you have your box cutter knife has blades that you can replace, and now the modern knife world is getting into that and saying, hey, we can do that too, and we can give you something that's fun to play with, and we can give you something that looks good. But you can also, instead of having to sharpen the knife, you can always take this one out and replace the blade. So, I mean, all those things, and that's where you're getting into work. And then at the same time, somebody who doesn't work cutting boxes all day long can still enjoy that and use it for whatever cutting purposes they have. So that tip down for the utility type cuts are important. Like I mentioned, Lefty before was always cutting things for his shipping label, so he wanted to have that tip down low. And then there's that belly versus straight edge. So, you know, something like this will have a belly and it's got more of a spear pointy blade. And then it's funny, I got all these knives out because they're good examples, but some of them are not getting shown. Then you got this straight edge, and there's a whole thing about this one has the tip as well. When it was designed, they did a lot of testing on how it cut in different materials, and they were looking for something more tactical, more self-defense, and this was the optimum with that hollow grind and everything like that. Hollow grind as well versus a tall flat, whereas you get something like this with this tall flat with that cutting geometry, and a lot of people are all about how slicey it is. How well does it cut paper? How well will it go through material, cardboard? Will it get caught up based on that cutting? And that's important. I mean, it is a knife. It is a tool. It has a function, and how it functions in that is important. More so to some people, less so for other people. Some people, if you're just collecting them and you never cut with them and then you resell them and you say it's never been cut, never carried, because you get more value out of it, then this whole conversation is all about how it looks rather than how it functions. So that blade shape thing, I think is very important. Materials are getting into the other side here. We're getting close. Hopefully, yeah, it's going to be about an hour-long video, guys. Crazy. Sorry. Watch it in parts. I should have said this at the beginning. I'll put it in the title description. Blade steels. So we're materials. We're blade steels. We're talking about our MagnaCuts. MagnaCut steel. That is something. It's almost like a triggering thing for some people, because you can also have the Bucks. There's another brand that has a lot of loyalty to it, and they're using like a 420 steel, 420 HC, and a lot of people just are not interested because of that. But it's a great knife, heavy built knife, good work knife. Different kind of carry. This one, you can get them with clips, you can get autos and everything like that, but this one is that traditional pouch on your belt. I just wanted to get it for that purpose. Anyway, handle materials. I mean, I can go through all the steels, but that can be a whole nother video. And what I might do is I might put out smaller videos on some of these topics as well, to get more in depth in it, because I'm really not being able to talk about it as much as I could easily, and not able to show as many of the knives because I just don't have the time. Handle materials, where you come from your FRN or your plasticky kind of material, which is very functional. For me, it feels a little cheaper, and it just doesn't. I just don't enjoy it as much on a knife like this. Very hard plastic material, but it functions. And if that's what you're using the knife for, then why not? Whereas you got this one here, which is the Pyrite Light, and it does have FRN, but it feels super solid. They do inset the liner, steel liner behind it, making it that strength. Sometimes you have knives that have like a steel liner that have that metal look of aluminum or titanium, but it's steel, and it may make it a little bit more heavy. This one might actually be aluminum, to be honest with you. I do have ones with steel. I think that this guy, yeah, this one's definitely, because you can feel it's a small little knife, but it's got weight to it. So it's got a steel handle, and if you don't mind the weight, steel handles, carbon steel or a stainless steel handle, is going to be plenty strong. And you can mill in different patterns into it if you want. But then you got, you know, with the FRN, you get the lighter weight, which is really nice for some people. We already went into that subject, and you can also form it. Probably less expensive to form this than it is to mill out something like this guy here. That's going to take some time, and that's putting some price into the knife. But you also get a lot of beauty involved in that, and functionality, because it does have that grip. Here's a piña with the Sagaha pattern. This thing's a work of art. Just a beautiful knife. Tiny little knife, but it is beautiful, and it'll cut. It'll do EDC tasks. So that's titanium. One of my favorites is a good micarta with some grip to it, and you can see you can do some milling into that as well. So it does give you those options. It's fitting into these to this area here, you know, where you got the jimping on it. They're actually putting it in the micarta. G10, like in a case like this, where you can dye it, if it's like the G10, the green, whatever you call it, I can't remember. Anyway, G10 is a great strong material. You can do machining on it, little texturing. You can see like layers in a lot of them, like this. Looks really cool, like almost like a wood pattern. Then you can also have like wood knives, like this guy. That's a funky one. What a great, crazy concept. Just take a piece of wood and make a knife out of it. Have this small little simple device to hold the blade in place. Stag is very cool. It has its own built-in texture to it. It does have limitations when you get into natural materials, because it is affected by, like wood is affected by weather, or when you're fabricating it, it could crack and things like that. So yeah, so different handle materials, and there's so many different ones and combinations of things, because you got titanium with an overlay type thing or an inlay, and you use the inlay to cover like in this case it's covering the lock bar, so it can serve as have a function as well as a look to it. Then you get into fancier materials, like this has a Damascus backspacer, little pops of color all over the place, lots of other things like that. Then another thing is bearings and washers. There's so many, guys, so many. I'm getting exhausted talking about it all, but I love it. I'm fueled by my passion. Washers versus bearings. So you get that drop shutty that so many people love, but you're not going to get that on so much on a washer knife. I'm sure I have something here. You know what I'm talking about, though. Like some of these work knives, of course, it's a back lock, so you're not going to really have that same kind of action to it. But a work knife like this isn't going to drop as well. But if it's a work knife where you're worried about getting bearings and dirt inside your bearings, do you really worry about the fact that you can still close it with one hand? Does it have to have that kind of action? Next is deployment and carry. Clips come into play. Here's a big topic. I think most people are on the side of the tip up carry, but Here's one with a tip down carry, and there's some reasons for that. We're talking about that on a video and comments, and whether or not it's safer, because if this thing starts to open your pocket, your hand's still not going to get cut by it, whereas it's tip up and it's open a little bit and you try to reach down, you might catch that point and get yourself a nasty gash. I've only had that happen once to me, and it was because it was a knife with a really weak detent. So that's how it went with that. But deep carry versus not so deep carry. Definitely a lot sticking out of the pocket here. If you've seen my videos, I talked about how if it's not deep carry, I see the advantage of being able to have something to grab onto. I don't worry about not being able to see a knife that's in my pocket. Here's a case where it's like kind of ultra deep carry, and there's people that see value in this. This is the value game. You're going to buy a knife and you're looking at all these aspects and you're checking boxes and you're saying it has this, it has this, it has this, but it costs this much. Am I willing to make that transaction? Deployment type for folders, because obviously a fixed blade deployment comes into play in the type of sheath that you have. But so if you have a Kydex or something like that, where you can pop it out, and then retention is important and all those kind of things, that's important. But for folders, it has to do with how quick, do you want to have a wave feature on your knife that makes it so it opens as it comes out of your pocket? Do you want to have an OTF? And I feel like you don't get that much time advantage out of an OTF. Personally, that's my opinion of it. But it's definitely got that cool factor. I got this little dude. Man, this one's fun. Cool knife, cool blade, under 2 inches. I can carry this guy in California. One I can't carry in California is one that's probably more dangerous to me than it is to somebody else, and that would be a butterfly knife. Different kind of deployment. It definitely has this intimidation thing. I remember seeing it in movies, and then you see some guy pull out one of these guys and he's flipping it around all over the place. It's kind of like the nunchucks. It's like it's intimidating. So speaking of intimidating, sometimes it's not even a knife. They have these things that are called spikes, and it's a very cool looking one. And this is self-defense, and this is what it is. Unless you want to pick your teeth with that guy, and it's cool looking. So it's collector. It's got a nice sheath and everything. I really like that guy. Anyway, don't want to go off too much more. We're almost at an hour right now. I'm going to just kind of go through this fast because I will have to do this in different times. So deployment type, there's so many different. You got the hole, you got the combinations of things where you got a hole or you have a flipper. You got ones where they try to give you every possible deployment that you can do, that kind of thing. And these are all, again, preferences. Mods, whole nother story. Just quickly going through it. It starts at a lower level with maybe you just get new scales, or you dye your scales, and you buy them and you put them on. That's very simple. Then you get into anodizing. I've watched it. I've never tried it. You have to have equipment for it, but it comes out with some really cool effects. Like this guy here. This is more than just anodizing. This was done by Stella from Stella's Knife Obsession. Does incredible stuff. So a lot of times either you're going to have to learn to do it, or you're going to have to send it out. Regrinds is another one. It's a little bit higher level. If you see Satu Dave, which is now Barefoot Bruisers on his channel, that's the name of it now. He does all kinds of regrinds and stuff like that. And he's the kind of guy that almost any knife he gets, he's going to do something with, unless he's just planning on moving it on. And then there's flipper deletes and adding thumb studs to knives that don't have them. So, if you say, oh, I only want to deploy this with the hole, and this really just gets in my way, like when it's open, I don't want to have it sticking out. I want to be able to put my finger here and not have that there. They'll have people chop that off. And I'm sure if you watch enough, you've seen stuff like that. Or adding a hole for deployment. If you really love middle finger flicking like I do, a hole is a big deal. And I bought this guy before they had the hole deployment. I'm thinking maybe someday I'll get a smaller one with just the hole in it, because it has a humongous finger back flipper. Still love the knife, but if it had a hole and maybe a smaller, well, even this big guy probably had plenty of room to put a hole in there, but they just don't have it. And then some people will flick it from the side. I'm not good at it. I can do it on some knives. You usually have to have some kind of traction. All right, guys. There's even more topics that I could talk about, but my voice is going. I'm almost done. And wow, this is going to take a long time to upload. It's a good thing I made sure I had my battery charged and deleted a bunch of files off my phone, so I had room to put this on. If you saw the whole thing, if you sat through the whole thing, wow, I am impressed. If you watched it all in pieces, or just, I don't know how you fast forward through this one, but I don't know. Anyway, it was fun for me. I've been thinking about it for a long time. I just jumped in with both feet, and what I might do is break it down into certain categories. Some of these are not going to be like a full video, but some are definitely worth having their own video. All right, guys, that's it for me. I got to go take a nap, man. I'm just wiped out. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being part of this, and you guys have a good day, and I'll see you on the next one, which will be shorter, I promise.